At this point, I want to open it to questions.
I'm Lewis. I'm an addict. I have a question but can't raise my hand.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing the screen, so I think now you can raise your hand.
Actually, I'm a co-host, so I can't.
Oh, you can't raise your hand.
I
Okay.
know. I've got a question, and I don't know how you all address this in this, clearly. First of all, congratulations on the way you handled it. I mean, it's like, it by necessity had to be play as you go sort of thing, and I think you guys handled it really well. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
My question concerns where the in-person conference was going after a successful conference in 2018, where there were some new proposals to change the way new business is handled at an in-person conference in 2020. Were you able to incorporate that in the virtual version of that, especially using at least one of the proposals that came out of new business and making it an ongoing conversation? And do you see that process still having life if we do have another in-person conference?
I would have to say yes, simply, and with some explanation. We definitely used some of what we learned in 2018 and tried to apply it rapidly to 2020. We were 6, maybe 7 weeks away from an in-person conference when everything changed. So what we tried to do, which I think was somewhat of what made it so difficult, is that we thought we could take those processes that we used in person in 2018 and flip them into a screen and utilize them virtually. And what we found out was that not all of them work virtually, and that we were going to have to evolve even further and pave that road or build that plane while we were flying it. And we think that the new ideas and the proposals that were generated in 2018 and 2020 will definitely come into play in 2022 and beyond. I know there was a proposal, I think, or an idea from the Northeast Zonal Forum about how to deal with new ideas. That's probably going to gain some traction. I think what happened also with 2020, in answer to your question, was that the body was given the opportunity to decide what was important to them and what we were going to deal with. So after the body decided what we were going to deal with, it eliminated some of that stuff that was created in 2018. So does that answer your question?
It absolutely does. And yeah, the prioritization of issues certainly took away the new business processes that we put in place. And so thank you for that. Thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we got Jimmy next. And by the way, I'm not using discretion. I'm going in order.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Yes, also kudos. That was my first experience at the WSC as an AD. I thought you guys did a great job with that. I ran the Zoom meeting. We did a hybrid regional meeting, and I understand how difficult that is, especially with that many people on there. So, and kind of tying into what was said, is my question was sort of, what is the process for changing the process? How does that work? Is that something done through the WSC, or is that done through the board or the facilitators? Like when you're going to change things for the next conference, right? How does that come about, or what does that process look like?
Right now, the best way to forward suggestions for changing processes, because processes are likely to change for the next one, is to forward them to NAS staff or the World Board. I mean, you can email Daniel or I directly, and we're in contact with staff and the board in discussing the processes. The preparation for 2022 has already started. So we're going to take some of the lessons of 2020 certainly the lessons of 2018, and try to evolve those into the next one. If your experience of your first virtual WSC generated some ideas of how your experience could be made better, those are important to forward to the staff and the board. The discussions that are taking place are going to look at all of those things, what worked, what didn't. And I think from my standpoint, if I was going to facilitate the next WSC, I want to hear from especially the first time attendees, because they're the ones who are affected the most. If you never attended a WSC and all of a sudden you were thrust into a virtual WSC, I can only imagine the confusion and frustration that might have been happening, at least in the first part. So forward them. What we do at the WSC first is we will present the processes prior to, and you'll have a chance to review them. I know that the processes will be talked about in the conference participant webinars leading up to the conference. And that's also a good avenue to bring forth those ideas.
Thanks.
Rusty, next.
I had a question about the timer for the 2 minutes. How is that dealt with in person and virtually if the sharer goes past that?
In person, there was a red, yellow, and green light, if I remember correctly, and it was a little more than 2 years ago, so I'm a little fuzzy. But there was a red, yellow, and green light. So when you were speaking and you reached a minute and a half, the yellow light would come on. And then at 2 minutes, the red light would come on, which was your signal to wrap it up. At that point, the facilitators can say, you're extended another minute or another half a minute, whatever it is, or you can finish your thought. Virtually, we have not solved that problem yet. What we were doing was, if I was facilitating, Daniel had a timer. If Daniel was facilitating, I had a timer. So not only did we have screens, but we had a device with a timer on it, and we would have to interrupt you. The same thing with the translators. That process was the same way. There was no bell that we could ring. We had to interrupt the speaker. So that's something that not solved yet. Big challenge. Randy is next.
Good morning, Mark. And I just want to echo what Lewis and others have said. Thank you for a remarkable service to our fellowship over the last couple of cycles. You're asking about input from new delegates. I've read a lot, but I've never attended until this year. And I just have to say, from my standpoint, I thought it went remarkably well, despite all the new characteristics of trying to do this virtually. So thank you so very much. And I think it went remarkably well, frankly. I do have a couple of questions. And these are more your opinion on things, not so much policy or procedure. So I'm going to warn you in advance. I'm going to put you out there a little bit on the diving board to let us know how you feel about a couple of things. You said something interesting to me about the discussion and more people wanting to participate. What is your sense of the types of participation? Was the minority more outspoken? Was the majority more outspoken, or was just everybody more outspoken at the last conference?
I think that in general, there were more people who were willing to raise their hand and speak. No, it wasn't the majority. The people who raised their hands the most continued to raise their hand the most. those who didn't raise their hand, by virtue that more people wanted to participate, I would say that they were more inclined to raise their hand than not. I mean, that's my observation from what I see on a participant screen with hands going up, and the process of keeping track of all of that. And when a session ended, I had a piece of paper with all, or actually 4 pieces of paper with all the delegates' names and what region they were on, and tick marks of how much they spoke. So I think it was, the answer to the question is more in general. And I can't tell you whether it was because it was virtual or because the opportunity was better, because of the processes. I wouldn't be able to offer an opinion on that.
Okay. The second part of that is, and again, I know you're winding down as co-facilitator, and hopefully you'll stay involved in service. I find it interesting that CBDM seems to be implemented differently, or let us say with different flavors, at the world level, at the zonal level, at the regional level, at the area and down to the home group level. And as you go back and hopefully participate with your region and in other areas, what is your thinking about, do you think it would be helpful for us to see more similarity in how we approach CBDM across the board than it is at the present time?
That's a great question. Having participated personally on a home group level, an area level, a regional level, and a WSC level in consensus-based decision making, group level is the easiest because it's the least number of people involved and the least number of opinions. WSC being the most difficult, managing over 120 people with 120 opinions. So from my standpoint and in my opinion, the most efficient consensus-based I've participated in so far, other than the group level, is the World Service level. The hybrids that go on at area and region are okay. But in the last part of your question, yes, if it was made more similar on all levels of service, I think it would be a smoother process, more easily understood by more people, and actually probably, in my opinion, embraced by more people. And Robert's rules let go of more easily. That answer that? Yep.
It does. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, and I think we got time for Kelly.
Hey, Mark.
Hey.
Mark is my hero. So I want to grow up and be like him someday.
There's an election process for that.
Yeah, we had, well, I'm getting there. Anyway. So we had virtual participation in 2018 from Iran and Australia. And then we all were thrust into this environment in 2020. What are your thoughts? Speculation, we won't hold you to, it's recorded, so you will be held accountable for what you say here. But in 2022, will there be implementations of some elements that the fellowship benefited from in 2018, where the entire fellowship were able to sit on their couch and observe the entire conference? Do you see something like that happening in 2022, where there's a hybrid World Service Conference, maybe something that might be real, or are we going to go thrust back into physical, and only delegates who, for whatever reason, can't physically be there are given one-to-one access to the conference, but not everybody else?
That's a great question. And I know that I've debated it with people over the last several months. I'm finding that there are some levels of service that benefit greatly from a virtual meeting and probably would bring more people into that service. It certainly widens the opportunity for participation. In answer to the first part, I would hope that the benefits of what occurred in 18 and 20 are taken and used moving forward. I will say this, I don't think that an in-person WSC can be replaced by a virtual WSC. I think it loses much of what its intention is to begin with. And the fellowshipping that has been lost, I have not experienced in the last 9 months of COVID, I've not experienced that anywhere virtually. That fellowshipping where you get that warm human feeling. And that is my opinion. And yes, I'll probably be held accountable for it. But I think that moving forward, the WSC could probably benefit by using some sort of hybrid. I would hope that in-person WSC continues in perpetuity forever, because I don't think that experience can ever be duplicated virtually. So some mixture of the two. I think it benefits us financially. It benefits us participation-wise. It benefits us efficient use of time-wise. Time and resources is what we always talk about. And I think that it opens the decision-making process up to the rest of the fellowship who never get to experience it. I was one who was highly pissed off when it was decided by some to put this on YouTube, because my face was going to be on YouTube. Well, I changed my mind. You know what? Does it really matter? I don't know. But if more people get to experience the WSC and the Worldwide Fellowship as it exists, that narrow-minded perspective that we get locally sometimes, I think, will dissipate. So yeah, huge benefits. And I've had to open my mind to that, and I hope that others have as well. Some people embraced it right away. I think people with gray hair don't embrace things that quickly anymore that have to do with technology. That's also my opinion. So anyway, I really appreciate it, everybody. I think my hour is up. I am very, very grateful that you asked me to do this. I hope that I helped. And if you have any questions along the way, by all means, send them my way. Thank you again. Matt, thank you for asking.
Thanks for coming out and doing it, Mark. We greatly appreciate it.